Hey everyone, and welcome back to our Cursor 101 course. And now that we have everything kind of set up and installed, now we can talk about some of the actual productivity features that we can actually leverage. So we can go over, what Cursor really is and how we can use it. So, as you can see here, we have a pretty empty project right now. But what we can do for the first moment is maybe you want to build a web scraper. So we will just create a basic Python file called main.py. And let's just build one using Cursor. And then before we do that, we can actually go on the settings here and at the top right, and this is how you access settings that are unique to Cursor and not VS Code. If you want to do the ones in VS Code, you would have to go under File, Preferences, and then VS Code Settings. And I guess you can also see Cursor settings here. But you can see what models that you can use, and you can also add your own models. All right. So, as you can see here right now, it doesn't have GPT-4 enabled, but it does have 4.0. It has Claude 3.5 Sonnet, etc., etc. And that just means that these are some of the models that it can leverage. And although it is free to use through Cursor's website that specifies, if you do it too many times, I think you will be restricted. So you do have to be careful with how many queries you do when doing this, because it costs them money to do. And they can't just do an infinite amount of abusing models. So just be careful. All right. So other than that, there's also some features you can enable if you want to go through that, but I'm not going to mess with any of this. And then of course there's beta if you want to get into something that's some of the more recent features that aren't maybe completely honed out yet. All right. So now that the settings are figured out, how do we make a very simple web scraping feature? And if you take a look to our left here, we can see that we actually have some options here for what Cursor can do for us. So the first thing I'm going to do is hit Control and L in order to ask Cursor a question. All right. So you can see that it's going to read over my current main file, but of course, if we don't want that, we can hit the X and we'll just add no context whatsoever. But again, if you want to add files or use specific files when you're asking the question, you just add it in there with the plus sign. All right. And then you can see which model that we're asking. So people really prefer Claude for programming, but of course GPT-4o could be just as good, and GPT-4o mini is just a little bit cheaper to run. But either way, so now you could probably ask it, how do I make a simple web scraping bot? All right. And then maybe we want to specify what website to use so it has a better understanding. And for one, I'll use the website that I want to use is quotes.toscrape.com. All right. And all you need to know about this website is that it's for people practicing web scraping, and it kind of just gives you a couple quotes that you can scrape as well as tags, etc. And it just kind of shows you the basics. So you can go into the HTML and you can see that they're all div quotes, and then you can just grab the text, etc., and get the contents inside. And that's the basics of how web scraping works. All right. So I just want to grab the quotes, and then I hit enter, and then you can see that's going to tell us that we need a couple libraries to start with. You can see you can use Python with request library to fetch the web page, and Beautiful Soup 4 from BS4 to parse the HTML. All right, so that is what we are going to do. And now that we have this text here, you can go ahead and ask questions about it, because of course AI just generated it, so you're not really expected to know what it means, right? And it's really important when debugging. AI isn't going to be able to always figure out your problem, especially if you're using something that's a little more niche, like a library that just got developed, etc. So it's okay to ask questions. So maybe you're going to ask a follow-up now. All right. So you could ask, I'm not even sure what go ahead and ask them. What are the parameters inside of the beautiful soup variable? And then you can go ahead and just ask them questions, and then they'll talk to you and summarize it just like you're talking to any other model, right? So it's more or less just built into our actual editor, as you can see. So the same thing as talking to, going to chat.openai.com and then asking the same questions. So they'll tell you response.txt is the contents of the web page, and it's what we got from the request.url call, because request.get is just going to fetch all of the HTML content for us and then just serve it into a variable. Right? And then the parser specifies the parser to use, and then I guess it's a built-in HTML parser that makes it a little easier for it to read. And then when HTML parses it, then we're able to search for certain tags. And then as you can see, it searches for a tag class equals text. All right, and of course it's a type span. And then as a result, it's unique to the website, but for this website, that's how it works, and we're able to get the text. All right, and that should be pretty straightforward. So if you are happy with it, then maybe you would just hit apply instead of anything else. And then you can see you can click the green button or the hotkey or the red button, and that just means approve the change or unapprove the change. All right, and of course, if you don't have these libraries installed, then it's obviously not going to work for you, right? So I did it beforehand, but all you have to do is go into command prompt and then go to wherever your Python interpreter is located, wherever you installed Python. And then inside of the scripts folder, you just have to type pip install beautiful soup 4. It won't do anything for me because it's already installed. And then you just do pip install requests. All right. And then just like that, you should be good to go. All right. So now that we have this guy kind of put into there, we can talk about, that's pretty much the most important feature of Cursor, because now we just have someone here right on the side and it has context to our whole file, so it knows what to do at all times. Because a lot of time when you're asking an AI model questions, you might copy and paste just a chunk of code saying what is wrong, and then sometimes it doesn't have the greater picture and it won't be able to make as good decisions. So we can go ahead and hit start here, see what happens, and you can see that it found us some quotes here. So quote 1 has this, quote 2 has this, quote 3 has this, and it seems to be working as intended. Of course, this is a super easy problem, but that's just one of the ways we can, make it work. So, as opposed to having this chat here that can just help you answer questions, etc., make code for you, that can make things quicker to process and understand, we can also use a tool here called edit, so Control K, and then you could give it editing instructions. So maybe you can say enumerate is too complicated of a feature, or too complicated. How can I make this more readable? Something like that. If you don't know what enumerate means. And then here you can see instead of enumerate, it just does a for loop in range, which is exactly what enumerate is. But it's just giving you a different language that you can better understand. So if you do want changes that are super simple, you can go ahead and do that. And if you're not happy, you can give follow-up instructions, or you can just reject it. But in our case, maybe you like this better. And then of course it just formats the string using the format key and the squiggly braces, and then you're able to, get the number and then the quote, just like that. So now it's just kind of putting it into a string for us. All right, and of course I should accept this as well. And that is how the editing works. So you can go ahead and mess with other editing as well. So maybe, obviously it doesn't really work in this example, but you could say, I want to look for, instead of spans, I want to look for a different class, maybe the footer, to see what other pages are available, etc. And you could just type that in there, and then it will do it for you. All right, so that is more or less how the editing works. And then of course, if we wanted to do something on our own end, such as maybe instead of looking for the quote inside that website, we also want to look for the tags available, we could do that. So I'm just going to open up the website one more time. And then you can see that we got the quote, and then we gave it a number, but now what if we want the author, and we also want the tags? So instead of just asking ChatGPT, maybe we'll start doing it on our own, and then we'll show you the autocomplete feature, which is kind of the last main important thing that Cursor can do for us. So for example, we know on this website here on TwoScrape that if we scroll down, there's a couple pages, or it says next. So if we go into here, you can see that there is a class called next, and it's a list item. So what we're going to do is look for that. And if we do click it, it's going to give us a second page of quotes to scrape. And you can see that, that the URL is just quotes to scrape.com/page/2. All right. So how are we going to actually do that? And of course, we're not trying to go too much into the tutorial portion of this, but more or less is that we're going to be looking for a next button each time we get on a page. So we can say next button, and this is one of the times you really want to use descriptive variables, because as you can see here, it already knows. So when you type next button with an underscore between it, the AI is going to recognize you're trying to look for the button for the next page. Maybe you'd even say next page button, which makes even more sense, right? And then as you can see here, it tries to autocorrect it for you and give you recommendations even though you don't necessarily ask for them or need them. All right, so it's telling you this is what it thinks you should do or what it thinks the best answer is. And of course, sometimes it might be wrong, but in our case, that could work. We know it's a list item and we know the class is next, right? And then again, it just keeps recommending more and more stuff for us, even though we're not actively asking it for help, which is really nice. Because sometimes it's just a small error or a small problem, and then you don't want to go over here and get into a conversation. Sometimes they'll just fix it for you right away. And of course, you can see here, you can see if next page button exists, then we'll get the next page URL, all right? And then it'll find the A tag corresponding with it, which is fair. So we know it's going to be /page2/whatever. And then it's going to, yeah, more or less build a URL off of that. All right. And then once that's sorted out, we should be good to go. And then we'd have the next page URL, and you could go from here and, yeah, grab the next page of content. And then maybe say you don't know how to grab the next page of content. All right. Well, it has the context of a file. So what we have to ask now is, now that I found a button for the next page, how do I print the next page's quote to? And then you can see that it'll give us a solution and explain it for us. All right. So this time it does it a little bit different though. It refactors our code such that it just formats the string like this. All right. So it does realize that we don't have to build a variable like that, and we can put it in as so. Okay. And then we can read why. So now we can take the scrape quotes function. Well, I guess we can just copy it in, see what happens. And then you can see it put enumerate back in because it thinks it's more efficient, which is fair. So you do have to be a little careful for that. But more or less, it's going to, it's going to use a while loop, and it's going to scrape a new page each time. All right, so it's going to look to see if there's a new page, and if there isn't a new page, then it'll stop. But if there is a new page, meaning there's a next button, then it'll continue to print the quotes for each of those pages. So now we're pretty much going through the whole website. And we can see what happens. It might take a while. So yeah, you can see that it scraped 100 quotes now instead of just the 10 on the first page. All right, and again, that took pretty much zero effort to do, right? I tried to put in my own ideas by saying the next page button, and then what it did was it refactored all of the code and made it more efficient. And although it might be a little hard to understand at times, you can always edit it like I talked about to make it a little bit more understandable. Or you could just highlight this whole thing and say add comments, right? And see what happens there. I haven't even done this myself, but we can see what happens, all right? And then you can, get a better understanding what's going on there. So it can help with documentation, and honestly, the possibilities are endless, right? But those are more or less the main features that I want to go through in this video. There are, of course, many more things you could do with this, but I just want to go through the basics in this course to give you guys a solid understanding of the foundation of this tool. All right, so we were able to make a really basic web scraper in essentially no time whatsoever. And whenever we get stuck, we can either ask them on the right side, or we can, use the autocomplete, and then we can use the edit feature to refactor code, etc. All right, and there you go. If you get ever confused about the hotkeys or how to get there, there's these little helpers on the left telling you how to do it or how to get there, and let Cursor help you. But this video's gone on for long enough, so I'd like to thank you guys for watching. And in the next video, we'll actually try to build another project from scratch using Node.js and a little bit more complicated tools than just a basic Python script. All right. So yeah, thanks again for watching. I'll see you in the next one.